Welcome back to F1 Life. If you haven't already, please consider hitting that subscribe button. It is so helpful to the channel. In 2023, the FIA have changed up the sprint format to try and make the weekends more interesting for fans. More fast laps and 2 races. Sounds like a good thing, but there's a bit more to it than that. So let's start with how the new format works. On Friday, you have the same free practice 1 session as we normally do. Then, on Friday afternoon, we have qualifying for Sunday's race. Once this qualifying session is complete, the order of the grid is set and doesn't change regardless of what happens on the next day. On a Saturday, it's all about the sprint. Essentially, it's a small race with its own qualifying session, both of which don't affect the order of Sunday's race. The sprint qualifying takes place on a Saturday morning, and then we have the sprint race with World Championship points up for grabs. At Baku, the sprint was over 17 laps, and there is no mandatory pit stop for teams, so you can go all the way on 1 set of tyres. Then on Sunday, it's business as usual with 1 full Grand Prix with the grid determined from Friday's qualifying. So how did all of this pan out in reality? Looking at it as a fan of the sport, we actually think it went quite well. The free practice 1 session on Friday was much more exciting as teams were doing short runs on low fuel, and it did catch out a few of the drivers. Then we had qualifying for Sunday's race, and again, drivers hadn't prepared as much as usual, and we had a great battle for pole between Charles and Max, with Charles ultimately winning that one out. The only annoying element was that the session is in the afternoon UK time. However, depending on what country the race takes place in, this time is likely to change throughout the year. Saturday though was the standout. Rather than endless laps with 1 qualifying session, we had a sprint quali and a sprint race. A shorter qualifying session did catch out some of the drivers, and it left room for no mistakes. Then we had the race, which was quite dramatic for a short 17-lap race. Now we come on to the elephant in the room. If you've watched the sprint race, you'll know what I'm about to say. The incident between George Russell and Max Verstappen on lap 1. So let's rewind a bit. George started the race in P4 with Max ahead of him in P3. However, George got a great start off the line and jumped Max, and they battled all the way into turn 1. And eventually this battle carried on into turn 2. In turn 2, George was on the inside and Max was on the outside. With cold tyres, George did lose a bit of grip, and he clipped the side pod of Max's Red Bull, which caused significant damage. It also cost Max performance. The damage was actually quite visible after the race, with the RB19 visible in Parc Fermé with a large hole in the side pod. In an interview after the race, George said, "I was down the inside. As a driver, you know the risks when you're on the outside. I'm here to fight, and I'm not going to hold back because he's leading the championship." In contrast, when Max was asked how the new format had gone, he replied, "Honestly, just scrap the whole thing. I think it's important to go back to what we have and make sure that every team can fight for a win. That's what we have to try and aim for." Sky Sports pundit and 1996 world champion Damon Hill didn't take too kindly to Max's comments. He was quoted saying, "We should just give Max Verstappen the championship and not bother with anything else. That's just sulking and being a poor loser." We can see why Max was annoyed after the contact at turn 2. The damage on the car was visible, and it must have cost him some performance. However, it's worth noting that this was lap 1, and it was hard racing, something which Max has done a lot to other drivers. George also made a good point in that Max would have probably done the same thing if the roles were reversed and he was on the outside. Thanks for joining us, and a big thanks to P1 with Matt and Tommy for motivating this channel. They have some awesome content. We'll leave the link in the description, so please go and check them out. As always, let us know your thoughts in the comments.